Welcome to the Let's Talk Seahawks podcast. I'm your host, Robert Smith, along with my co-host, Adam Carver-Stellman. Today, we'll be reviewing our top 10 2023 NFL Draft quarterback prospect rankings. Adam, let's talk Seahawks.
Let's talk draft, man. We got what, 3 weeks? Not even that.
Yes, we do.
Less than 3 weeks.
Actually, no, it is. Yeah,
it's exactly right. Yeah, this is recording this on Thursday, so it is exactly 3 weeks.
2 weeks.
Although we're 2 weeks. Really? I gotta fix my calendar, man. But no, hey, look, this is gonna be great. We're gonna be gearing up for our hopefully what we will be our draft live show. That's still the plan. It's still in the works. So this is gonna be fun because we're gonna be going through position by position and doing our ranks. And I know I know you're the more analytical guy. I think your ranks are probably pretty much in line with what the consensuses are. I'm a little weird. I just kind of go by it. Look, I watch some of these guys play. I see this tape. I like it. So I'm going to have some interesting ones that I'm sure will knock down a peg or two when we actually go through it. But I can't wait to do this with you. We haven't really discussed what our individual top 10s are. So this is going to be kind of fun because you're going to get to see my number 10 along with your number 10 as we kind of go through this. So yeah, let's get started, man.
Definitely. So this is going to be a little bit different, not quite a straight 1 through 10. Let's give you a look here. So what we're going to do, for those of you on audio only, I'll describe this. Those of you watching on YouTube can see how we have this laid out. We're going to go from 10 up to 1, but our 9 and 10 position, those are late round guys that we're looking at. Prospects that a team might take a flyer on, a developmental type of prospect. And then we have 6 through 8. Those are going to be our mid-round players, kind of guys that we're watching just to see how everything works there. Guys that we're keeping an eye on that we think are going to go in that 3rd, 4th, 5th round, 6th round kind of range. And then 1 through 5 is our individual top 10 or top 5 for that position. And since we're both doing 5, that would make a top 10. Shout out to the NFL Draft Stock Exchange guys, or I guess NFL Stock Exchange. They did something similar to this format for their top 10s. I really liked it. So we kind of took that idea and then made it our own with the mid-round and late-round editions. So here you go. Here is the Let's Talk Seahawks podcast top 10 player rate rankings plus an additional 10 prospects to watch in the draft.
You meant top 5 and then 5 prospects to watch. Don't worry, they got you.
Yeah, they got it. All right. So coming in at number 10 for myself, we have Tyson Bagent from Shepherd. I really like this guy. He came in Division II school, started as a true freshman. He was an unranked recruit at a high school, 0 stars, went to Shepherd, took that starting job. He started as a true freshman, and he has not given up those reins. He's a 5-year starter because he got an extra year due to COVID. He has 53 starts under his belt, almost doubling the Bill Parcells 30 start requirement for quarterbacks. And get this year, he set the all-time NCAA touchdown record for career touchdowns at 159. Insane.
Yeah, it's averaging 30 touchdowns a year for 5 years. That's there are very few NFL quarterbacks that can match that. So yeah, that alone is impressive. It's kind of funny because you've got Tyson at 10. I've got Jaren Hall as my number 10. I almost flipped this before we did this, but we'd already kind of gotten through the slides, and I didn't want to make things difficult. And it was only because I've been able in the last couple of days to watch a little bit more film on these guys. But let's stick with your guy at 10, Tyson Bagent, who, spoiler alert, is going to be my number 9 on this list. So we'll kind of be able to go back and revisit him. But the reason I had a Bagent where I had him at number 9 and you got him at 10 is for all the stuff that you said. I mean, this guy is a career record holder, not only for his school, but he owns several NCAA records. And he was in a Division II school. So yeah, you can talk about lower competition and whether or not he was facing top tier talent. But to do what he did through 5 years, to not only one go in as a true freshman, take that starting job, and then run with it for his entire college career. But he didn't really have a step back. Every year he kind of built on what he did. His interception went down, his completion percentage went up. His touchdowns were a little bit back and forth. He obviously averaged over 30 every year, but he was just one of the most consistent guys in college football, which is why he held that starting job for the 5 years he did, because there was no reason to look at anybody else or move on. He is just a consistent player. This is obviously a guy that part of the reason we're looking at this is because, Seahawks have this kind of affinity for undrafted guys. I'm not saying he's going to go undrafted, but there's a possibility that this guy is a priority undrafted free agent as opposed to a draft pick for the Seahawks. And they could do a lot worse than Tyson Bagent as a rookie quarterback. That's for sure.
Oh, for sure. I mean, this guy, let's see, what my other bullet points, he's a natural passer who will be a developmental prospect at the NFL, but that's good for the Seahawks because even if he doesn't make the 53, I would love to have him on the practice squad for a year. He's somebody who's going to go out and compete every single opportunity he has. That's why for me, he has the gamer tag. And those are guys, and this is going to come up throughout all these positions. These are guys who want to show you that they're the best every opportunity that they get. And that's what this guy is. And yeah, I really like him. I want a team. I would love it to be the Seahawks, but I want a team to take a chance on him. And I want to see what he can do in the NFL.
I think this guy is probably going to get drafted. I expect him to get drafted. I don't know if it's going to be 6th or 7th round, but I do think that someone's going to take a chance on him for sure, especially after what we saw from a 7th round pick last year in this division.
Oh, yeah. Brock Purdy tore it up. And
I wasn't going to mention his name. Enough said about the 49ers. This is a Seahawks podcast.
He's my number one, like QB1 for the Niners going into next season.
He should be.
Drafted.
And he should be. I think they've already said that they're going to have Trey Lance compete with Sam Darnold. I fully expect when and if Brock Purdy is healthy and ready to go for the season that he takes over that job again. The man's a baller. I hate him.
So how about Jaren Hall? Like, tell me a little bit of why Jaren
Hall.
Right,
yeah, let's move on to my number 10 guy. So look, so Jaren Hall, one of the reasons I have him on this list, not only because I think it's not obviously a very deep quarterback class. I think there might be maybe 10, 12 or 13 draft eligible quarterbacks coming out this year. So it's not a really deep quarterback class. And it's obviously a top heavy one. And then we've got all these guys kind of like falling down the list. But my family, I've got family in Utah still. My dad's always been a big BYU fan growing up. I mean, I grew up watching guys like Ty Detmer and Steve Young. I still watch BYU games when I get a chance. It's the only college football game I got to attend live was BYU's bowl game here in New Mexico, which is where I live. So I got to see him up close. Jaren Hall is one of those guys who I still think obviously needs some time to develop. This was his first year and only year as a starter for BYU. He obviously backed up Zach Wilson, the number 2 overall pick by the Jets last year, the year before. Oops. Anyway, the point being he doesn't have a lot of starts under his belt, but this is a guy who's extremely athletic. He's a multi-sport athlete. He had college scholarships, not only for baseball, but also basketball, which is funny considering I think he's 6'1", not a really tall guy. But he's an athlete, like just a pure athlete. This guy's spent his entire life playing sports. He's got great mobility. He's really good on improvisation. They used him a lot in the running game, a lot of design runs by BYU during his career. He's also a really high character guy for me. And I might be a little bit biased because we both grew up LDS, and obviously him going to BYU, which is one of my favorite schools to watch. But I love this dude. He's going to be a little bit older coming out. I think he's 23 right now. He'll be 24 before the season starts, which I think is a theme that we'll kind of get to see with a lot of these later round guys, is they're a little bit more up there in age. But he's another guy that I think is just a ton of upside. I think if the Seahawks took him and put him on the practice squad, or even had him backing up Geno Smith for a couple of years, he could eventually be the guy in Seattle. I think he's got that kind of upside. He just needs to be given a chance, and obviously a little bit more training. But I loved watching him in college. I'm going to be keeping an eye on him no matter where he goes with his professional career. But I'd love to see him in Seattle for sure.
Oh yeah, I think he's a great prospect. Same as you, high character guy. Not only did he have scholarships in multiple sports, but he played center field on BYU's baseball team for at least 2 years while he was there. So he was an active multi-sport athlete while in college. Let's see. He's a great athlete who can extend plays. Check. Definitely part of his game. And he's got that really good arm talent. There's kind of a history of baseball players who are quarterbacks coming through the league. One that we're familiar with in Seattle is one Russell Wilson.
Absolutely.
Who, was actually drafted by the
I think it was the
Yankees,
Oakland A's.
I think. Now, yeah. Anyway, so who was actually drafted? And you got to look. Pat Mahomes was a high baseball prospect as well.
He was drafted by the A's. Thank you. I knew somebody was. Yes.
There you
Pat
go.
Mahomes.
So it's not unheard of for a quarterback with a baseball background to have success in the NFL. And Jaren Hall is somebody who's developmental, but he's really athletic. He's somebody you could bring in and have a special package just for him as a young quarterback so he can see the field and get some actual game action, but not hurt your offense during his development phase. So he's somebody that can really come in and impact day one while he's learning. And I think that's an awesome trait for a late round guy.
Yeah, agreed. I think we're going to see a flip here at number 9. I think we are.
We are. So coming up at number 9 for myself, I have UCLA quarterback Dorian Thompson-Robinson, or DTR, as we like to shorten things to. And Adam has one Tyson Bagent from Shepherd, who we just spoke about. Anything you want to add on Tyson Bagent before we go into DTR?
Just one thing. I mean, in addition to his record holders, this guy is earned the Harlan Hill Award as a true freshman. The Harlan Hill Award, for those of you who don't know, this is Division II's top tier award. It's basically the Division II Heisman. This is just the best athlete or the best player in Division II college football. He won it as a true freshman, and he was in the running all 5 years of his college career. That's the kind of athlete and leader that Tyson Bagent is, and I think that's obviously worth noting.
Oh, for sure. I think one thing that I didn't say earlier is he has really good escapability. He's a quarterback that can move around a little bit and extend a play when things start to break down. And if you watch some of his games at Shepherd, and it's hard to get the film, but it's out there, you can find it. He was constantly pressured. He would get the snap and somebody was running free from somewhere. I mean, people did not want this guy completing passes. He was blitzed on every single play. So he's experienced dealing with pressure, dealing with the being in the pocket, and when the pocket collapses, he can move, scramble out, and extend a play in order to keep his team alive. And that experience is going to translate really well to the NFL because he's already in that quick thinking mode. He's not just dealing with a system like you'll see some of these other more higher rated quarterbacks are kind of coming out of system play.
Yeah, I think that's definitely worth a mention. I think it's kind of funny for me. Obviously, I've got him at number 9, but you'll kind of see a little bit of a juxtaposition when we get up to our top tier, and especially at number 1. I'm not going to spoil anything for you guys and tell you who we got at number 1. But for me, if you want to talk about experience and guys that can come in and lead an offense right away, it's kind of funny that because I think my number 1 quarterback on my list and my number 9 being Tyson Bagent are my top 2 guys. If you want to just thrust somebody in that starting position right away, ready to go for the NFL. Even though Tyson Bagent's obviously going to be a later round pick or maybe even an undrafted free agent, if he ended up taking the starting job his year 1, I wouldn't have any worries behind it or for him doing that because I think he can rise to the occasion.
Yeah, I think he can rise to the occasion and perform as well as any rookie would be expected to perform. We're not saying he's going to come in and be this veteran, salty guy behind the center. So my guy, DTR, Dorian Thompson-Robinson, another really experienced quarterback. Funny how my last 2 guys are both guys who have a ton of starts under their belt, right? He was a 5-year starter. Once again, got that extra COVID bonus year. He's a great athlete, ran a 4.56 in the 40, and he had the strongest arm at the combine. We went into the combine and what was the talk? Oh, Will Levis is going to tear it up with that cannon. Oh, Anthony Richardson, you're going to be shocked at how hard he throws the ball. Yet the guy who had the strongest arm at the combine was DTR out of UCLA. And you saw that on his deep balls. I think he threw 62 miles an hour. Anthony Richardson threw 60, Will Levis threw 59. So right there with the top guys and surpassing them by a decent amount.
Yeah, I mean, so obviously this guy playing for the UCLA Bruins, I got a chance to watch him in a game against the Washington Huskies this year. Being from Washington State, I think, even though I do follow WSU as well because I did go to U of I and they're just across the way, I have a little bit more of a love-hate relationship with the Cougars than I have with the Huskies. I just love the Huskies. They were the team I rooted for growing up. Watching him pretty much dismantle the Washington defense for 2 quarters. He played obviously all 4 quarters, but it was really the second and third quarters of the game that he played against Washington where he just looked lights out. I mean, he was completing almost every pass. And we have a great quarterback in Washington in Michael Penix, and he was just the better guy on the field that day. And I think that's impressive considering what Penix did last year. But I did watch that one game, and he definitely stood out for me. He would have been number 11 if we had a top 11 on this list for me. He's definitely a guy to look for. I think Pete Carroll's obviously going to be pretty well versed in him being, playing in the Pac-10. So I'm sure that they have a pretty in-depth scouting report on this guy, and I wouldn't be mad at all if the Seahawks took a flyer on him late in the rounds at all.
Yeah, and you're showing your age, as I thought nothing of Pac-10.
Yeah, I know.
It's the Pac-12.
I was going to say Pac-12 before that. That would have been even worse.
All right, so last thing I want to say about DTR is he needs to improve his pocket awareness. He takes some pretty poor sacks in situations when he probably could have thrown it away or stepped up into the pocket to get away from the pressure. That's something that kind of is a red flag to me, because in the past, that's been a trait that isn't very coachable. You see guys who have that problem their entire career, even if they work with the best guys. They try, they work on it, but it's about the feel for the game, and they don't have that awareness of the pressure to go and step up and kind of keep themselves out of that. Best of luck to him. I really hope that's something he can work on. All right, so looking up at number 8. Now we're getting into our mid-round players. These are guys that we like, guys that we want to see out there in the draft. And for me, that's Tanner McKee out of Stanford and Stetson Bennett for Adam out of Georgia.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, you're fine. I see Tanner McKee as that old school throwback pocket passer, that Peyton Manning kind of guy, the quarterback who is living and dying by his arm because he might as well have his shoelaces tied together. He is not running away from anybody. He's got size. He's 6'6". He's a big quarterback, great at reading defenses, and really good at going through his progression, clean, quick, making quick decisions. This is a guy who is being disrespected and devalued by the NFL, wanting all of these improviser type quarterbacks who can get out of the pocket and extend plays, which really just means you're not scheming protections right. You're not drawing up plays that can develop within the time that your protection allows. I get it's nice to have somebody who can extend a play and who can make something out of nothing. But if you live and die by making something out of nothing, did you have anything to begin with? Probably not. So it's rough for him because the NFL is devaluing the traditional pocket passer. He is definitely a better quarterback than his draft position will state after the draft. I think he's going to end up going 3rd, 4th, 5th round. And honestly, 10 years ago, he probably would have gone somewhere between 20 and 40.
Yeah, I think that's all the reasons that you kind of said why he's not really being looked at in this draft are the reasons why he's not on my list. You won't see him in my top 10, and it's really because he is that kind of like statue pocket passer. And it's not to say that he all he does is stand back there and throw the ball. I think he definitely has ability to kind of read pressure in the pocket. He can manipulate the pocket in a way that few guys coming out of college can. there's a lot of upside here. I mean, this is a guy who could legitimately end up being a starter in the NFL if he's given the chance in the right coaching scheme. I know this is obviously not the podcast to have this conversation. I just want to say that if the New England Patriots are looking to draft a guy that they maybe want to have compete with their current starter, this is a guy I think they would look at. I wouldn't be surprised if they took a late flyer on him. This is definitely a Bill Belichick kind of guy, in the sense that I think he has the kind of upside that you saw with. I'm not going to say the name of the GOAT. He's not Tom Brady. I'm going to say that, but this is a guy who definitely has those intangibles. He's a smart player. You've got to. I mean, Stanford University is definitely not a slouch when it comes to academics. This is a university that's known for developing really smart, really well structured quarterbacks. I mean, the last guy that came out of Stanford that was a big deal would have been, why can I talk?
Andrew
right
Luck.
Now? Thank you, Andrew Luck. I was going to say Young, and that's obviously not right. Andrew Luck. He doesn't have that kind of athleticism or mobility. Andrew Luck was a rare specimen in those categories. But this is a smart quarterback. I mean, he can read defenses, he can manipulate the pocket, and he can throw on time. In the right system, this guy's going to come in and definitely make an offense look good.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I absolutely love your pick here at number 8, Stetson Bennett out of Georgia. He's a little higher on my list, but why do you like Stetson Bennett so much, and why is he your number 8?
Yeah, I definitely look. I know that I might have him a little bit lower than you do on that list, and I think that's really just because of the same reasons that most people kind of overlook Stetson Bennett. This is a guy who he doesn't have those intangibles. This is not a specimen. He's not he's not the tallest or the biggest guy. He doesn't have the greatest arm. He's not the best athlete. He doesn't wow you on the field. You don't turn on Stetson Bennett game tape and go, hey, look, this is the guy you're watching. He played for Georgia. Georgia's a defensively schemed team, but still has a lot of talent on offense. And that's why he was overlooked. He's surrounded by a great team, but he was still the leader of that team. He took him to 2 straight national titles. The one thing that Stetson Bennett has, and I think maybe more than anybody else in this draft, is the it factor. This guy is a leader. He can go in and take over a locker room. Look, he was a walk-on at Georgia. He almost, I think did he step away for a year, or he left for a year and came back because he couldn't get a scholarship. But this is a guy who, when given the chance, has always risen to the occasion. I don't expect the team to take him in the first 4 rounds of this draft. Maybe not even the first 5 or 6. He might drop to the 7th round, and it's gonna be because he doesn't have the intangibles that a lot of people are looking at or looking for at the quarterback position. But this guy, I think, if given a chance in the NFL, could make some noise. He's a leader. He's a smart guy, great locker room guy. The reason he's 8 on my list and above those other 2 guys who I think have a little bit more of a higher ceiling, because I do think that athletically Tyson Bagent and Jaren Hall blow Stetson Bennett out of the water. But this guy has done it at every level. He's always competed, which is one of Pete Carroll's mantras. And when he's competed, he has competed at the highest level. So Stetson Bennett, I think, is one of those guys that's being overlooked. I don't know if he's ever going to be a star in the NFL. But this guy has the potential to be a career backup. That you look at guys. Think about anybody that's backed up Pat Mahomes in Kansas City. That's been able to step in and lead an offense the way that it's supposed to be led. Stetson Bennett's that guy.
Yeah, absolutely love Stetson Bennett. He is probably my favorite quarterback prospect in this draft, personally, not as, oh, that's my number 1 quarterback. But he's a guy who, like you mentioned, he went to Georgia, redshirted, didn't get any time, didn't get any chance of playing. And then he said, I'm going to go prove myself. So he went and he played at Jones Junior College, went to Jones Junior College, had success with them, got a scholarship back to Georgia, went back to Georgia, worked his way up the depth chart, became the starter, played, won 2 national championships. Like, how much more do you want from this guy? He bet on himself, right? We like that in Seattle. Shout out to Geno Smith, betting on himself yet again with his contract. He bet on himself. He proved it. And he went out there and played lights out. Now, he did have a little slip up there at the end of the season. Got arrested for drunken disorderly or something along those lines. Listen, you got to be smart. He's still a college kid. He's a little older, right? He's a 25-year-old prospect. to me, that's not a bad thing. That's somebody who can come in who's already got maturity. And listen, we were all in our 20s, right? We understand that sometimes stuff happens. You learn from it and move on.
I don't remember it. If I had a 20s, I don't remember it. So maybe that's,
you don't remember it. That tells you
that probably says more about
your
me.
20s were like.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, I personally look. The arrest thing. That's a little bit of negative press before the draft. Obviously, the timing is really awful for him. But I just kind of throw that out the window. Look, I mean, the man was coming off his second national championship of his college career. He was graduating. He knew he was going to the NFL. You know, he was out there with his friends. Got a little bit stupid. I can't fault him for that. I mean, it wasn't like he did. It wasn't like it. You know, it's not like assault and battery. It's not like he hurt anybody. You know, he was just a drunken idiot. We've all been there.
Yeah. As far as him as a quarterback, he is more athletic than he tested. If you watch, his 40 was really smooth. It almost looked like he pulled up at the end. And I agree with Rich Eisen and the announcers that day of the combine coverage. And that is, he probably wanted to show that he was athletic, but not get pigeonholed into that, oh, this is just an athletic quarterback. That's not what he is. He's not like an option guy coming out, but he's athletic. He has smooth athleticism, which is important because you can tell when somebody's working too hard to run fast. And he wasn't. I mean, he ran a 4.6 40. It just gliding through it. And as far as the ball, I thought he threw well. He had a really good combine. He was throwing the ball down the field. One of the knocks on him was he doesn't have the arm strength. He can't push the ball down the field. Well, if you watch him, he was throwing the ball at the exact same places that Anthony Richardson, Levis, Stroud, all those guys were putting the ball. Stetson Bennett was putting the ball within 2 yards of those guys on those deep throws.
Well, it's not just that. I mean, arm strength isn't everything, right? I mean, you got to talk about placement and touch. I mean, that's been a big knock on a lot of really strong arm quarterbacks. I mean, you can go all the way back to John Elway, and the question was, does he throw too hard? Touch is important. I mean, you can put the ball perfectly, but if it's too fast and too hard, then the receiver's going to have a hard time catching it. The thing that, and I'll go just reiterate what I said about Stetson Bennett. The thing about Stetson Bennett, and the reason why I think he should be, and he probably should be a little higher on my list, and the reason he's probably higher on yours, and the reason he should be higher on draft lists, is because this guy will come in. I think he's a perfect locker room fit no matter where he goes. I'd love to see him in the locker room in Seattle, but he can come in, he will do his job, and he'll do it right. He'll come in, if whatever offense it is that he's put in, he will make that offense work the way it is supposed to work, which is why I think if there's any guy, if the Seahawks are not going to go early round quarterback and they're going to wait and wait and wait, if they can get Stetson Bennett in the later rounds, I'm going to stand up and cheer.
Yeah, as will I. He's the type of guy who will be a 15-year NFL backup. Somebody who will quickly come in and learn the system, good locker room guy, and then can step on the field and get it done when he has to, but will still have that competitive attitude and push your starter in camp and push them in preseason and make them better. That's who Stetson Bennett is. He makes other people on the team better just by being there. As you can tell, I really like Stetson Bennett as a prospect.
Well, I didn't notice. I know we're not going to get to him on your slide for a couple more, but let's.
And of course, because you said that, Stetson Bennett is my number 7.
There we go.
And for you, we have Max Duggan from TCU.
Yeah, look. So this is a guy I had to go back and watch. I'm a huge fan of the Horned Frogs. They're obviously a Texas team, and having spent time in Austin and kind of following the Longhorns down there, I've got to watch him play a little bit. This is a guy who I think has all the intangibles you could ever want in a quarterback. He's a big, strong arm guy. Athlete, dual threat. He can run the ball if he needs. He's elusive. He can manipulate the pocket. From all reports, he's a decent locker room guy. The biggest thing with Max Duggan, and the reason he's on my list here as high as he is at number 7, because I don't think this guy has reached his ceiling in college. I think this is a guy who projects to the next level to possibly take that next step. I'm not going to, I don't want to, I know you hate NFL comparisons, but this is a guy who could be, I think his floor is here, and I think his ceiling's here. Josh Allen. I think he has that kind of range. I think there's going to be knocks on him about his accuracy, about his maturity, all this stuff. He's a younger guy, but when you look at just the athleticism, what this guy's ceiling is, I think he's obviously I have one guy that I think has a higher ceiling, and we'll get to him eventually, but he has an incredibly high ceiling. This is a guy who would come in, sit behind for a year, and I think he could end up taking over and being the starter in his second year. Absolutely no problem. He's got that kind of upside. He's exciting to watch. Go back and I had to go back and look at some of his games. This is a guy who, when he's on the field, you can't take your eyes off.
Wow, that's a very interesting take. It's a take that I have not heard from a lot of people, and it's a different take than what I have on him. So for the prospect, I hope that you're correct and I am wrong, because the way I see it, I've completely taken him off my board. I'm not saying he's a bad quarterback. I'm not saying he's a good locker room guy or whatever. Nothing like that. I'm just saying if I were making the pick, I would let somebody else take him. I'm just taking him off my board.
Yeah, no, that's completely fair. I mean, that's why he's where he's at on my list. Again, I think this guy has a really low floor, which was something that was talked about with Josh Allen when he was coming out too. There was accuracy issues in college. Decision making's an issue. He's obviously still a much younger guy. But again, I think that if the Seahawks are going to look at him at like using a mid-round pick on a developmental guy, I don't know that there's anybody that has the kind of upside that he has at that range between, like, let's say the fourth and sixth round.
Well, say you're correct. Is he somebody who has to sit on a roster for 5 years before his skills get to the point where he can actually be effective on an NFL field?
Well, I already said I think he could come in. I do think that I think he needs to sit at least a year, and I don't think there's a better guy to sit behind in this league than Geno Smith. And I don't know that he's going to take that leap in his second year. But I think that if we're going to groom, if there's a guy that we're going to pick in this draft that we're thinking, okay, this guy has all the intangibles, we can bring him in, we can groom this guy to be the starter of the future. I don't know that there's a guy that has a ceiling. There's one guy I think that has a higher ceiling, but I don't know that there's a guy that has in this range of the draft that has the ceiling that he has. That's why he's still here on the list for me.
All right.
The upside is just that high.
If you're right, I think for him, being in an NFL camp would be good, but then going and playing in a developmental league, the XFL, the USFL, going up to Canada, that's more the route I see Max Duggan getting to come back to the NFL. And that's going for a couple years, coming back when he has a little more experience with guys of that athletic caliber. And then maybe you're right. Maybe he comes back and he takes that leap, kind of like Kurt Warner went to NFL Europe and then had a Hall of Fame career. I'm not saying that's for Max Duggan. I'm not saying it's not. So who knows?
Yeah, no, he's a developmental guy for sure. I don't, this is not a guy that we're going to pick. And you know, I would be, if we picked him, let's say we take him in one of the later rounds of the draft, a day 3 pick, and something happened to Geno and he went down, I would not want him to be the starter year 1. I think he'll look lost. I think that's a recipe for disaster. But if this is a guy that we can either stash on the practice squad or keep on the roster and develop over the next year, maybe 2 seasons, he's got the kind of upside to come in and blow this league up. He's got that kind of athleticism.
Well, yeah, he's definitely athletic. He ran a 4.52 40, tested really well in the other areas. I just think he's more of a system quarterback. He ran a lot of spread, a lot of RPO kind of stuff. And that really doesn't translate. We're seeing more RPOs in the NFL, but they're a little different than they are in college. He's going to have to learn a lot to get into a pro-ready system and then be pro-ready himself coming out of that.
Yeah, and I think for me, when I was looking for these mid-round guys that I think could eventually develop into starters, that's kind of where I'm at with this pick for him. Because I do think this is a guy that if he's given the right kind of coaching, which I think he can get in Seattle, and the right kind of development, I just think the sky's the limit. If he could reach his potential, the sky's the limit for Max Duggan.
All right. So looking at our number 6 quarterbacks, for me, I have Clayton Tune out of Houston, and you have Jake Haener out of Fresno State. I thought Clayton Tune had a sneaky good combine. He was kind of a name that was under the radar. He was in the same quarterback group as Stroud and Richardson. The eyes were definitely not on him, but he stuck with those guys. Every time those guys would throw, and then he would come up right afterwards, the throws looked the same. He hung with them. There was no step down in quality when Clayton Tune took the field. Decent athlete, right? Ran a 4.64 40 and a 37-inch vert. I mean, right there, like I said, with Stetson Bennett, right about those same numbers, right? He had like I said, a great combine. He's willing to take risks, which I think is a good thing and a negative at the same time, because he sometimes takes risks in throwing through passing lanes and throwing into windows that maybe he shouldn't. Like, listen, yes, you might have the arm strength. You can zip it in there between those two guys, but you didn't see that safety over the top. So there's some things he needs to work on. So that's why he would be mid-round developmental, but he's got a lot of upside. I think he's got a decent ceiling. I think his floor isn't the basement, like with Max Duggan there. I think maybe his floor is the first level. So he's still got a bit to work on, but coming in, I think he has the arm talent that he can hang on an NFL roster or at least be effective in a camp.
Yeah, I think Clayton Tune's one of those guys, and I didn't watch a lot of game tape on him, but from what I saw, he reminds me a lot of several. We could go through names, but he looks like a guy that's probably going to go either third or fourth round. He might sneak into day 2. I think he's probably more likely a day 3 guy, early fourth round kind of guy. But the team does bring on to maybe develop behind an established starter or a bridge quarterback because they see the upside for him. This is a guy that I would put in like that same category of, I think, almost every quarterback that got drafted last year, where he has a chance to be a starter. I think he has a pretty decent upside and not, like you said, not an extremely low floor. This guy, worked in a system that I think translates well. He wasn't under center a lot in Houston, but he did play under center. He was calling plays during some cases. I agree. I mean, this guy is clearly a guy. Like I said, I think there's 12 or 13 quarterbacks that are draftable quarterbacks in this year's draft. If we had a little bit longer list, he probably would have snuck in there 12 or 13 for me.
Yeah. For me, I actually really like Jake Haener. I knew you were going to put him on your list, so I opted not to put him on my list.
Now, why would you think that?
But really good player. I mean, just think of what he's accomplished. I believe he started out at Washington, and then he ended up transferring down to San Diego State. Great move for him. He ended up leaving the school breaking David Carr and Derek Carr's records at that school. So if you want to look at the caliber of quarterback whose records he took away, that tells you that this guy can at least sling the football around the field.
Yeah, look, I mean, he was
undersized.
A little bit. Yeah, 6 foot, about 200 pounds.
Yeah, so he's a little undersized, but he's a good athlete. He's got a strong arm, great football instincts, and a really high football IQ. This is somebody who could carry a clipboard for a couple years and then be effective in the NFL. This is somebody who I project 2 years down the road could be a starter. Really like Jake Haener.
That's exactly why I have him mid here on this list. I think of all the prospects I've got on this list, whether you look at Max Duggan, Stetson Bennett, Tyson, Bagent, Jaren Hall, the reason I put him where I put him, and I will admit to a little bit of bias. Obviously, I'm a big Huskies fan. This is a local guy, grew up in Washington State. I was a 5-star recruit coming out of high school, multi-sport talent. This guy had talk about playing baseball and possibly being drafted into Major League Baseball. He's got that kind of athleticism upside. This guy's a very fluid athlete. He's a very smart player. I think the reason why he couldn't break on and be the starter at Washington was just because the guys in front of him had, again, higher upside, which is why he's here midway through my list. I don't think his ceiling is as high as anybody that's in front of him, and maybe not as high as a couple of the guys beneath him. Max Duggan, I think, has a higher ceiling. Tyson Bagent probably has his higher ceiling. But this is a guy who he could come in, step right in to any NFL roster, and he is a professional. This guy will learn the system, execute it properly. I don't think he's got the it factor like Stetson Bennett does, but this is a guy who, if Geno went down for us mid-season or early in the season, and Jake Haener was our backup, I would feel completely fine about the offense. He can execute. He's got enough of an arm to put the ball anywhere. He sees the field really, really well. For being a shorter guy, he can manipulate the pocket. He reminds me a lot of when you look at Drew Brees, especially during his days in San Diego, where he was able to move and manipulate that pocket and move around to find those throwing lanes. That's the kind of guy that Jake Haener is. He's the consummate backup, and I hate to put that kind of a label on him because I do think, like you said, he could step in and be a starter. But this is a guy, if we wanted a guy that kind of sit behind Geno Smith, give that kind of support, but could step in at any moment for us, Jake Haener's the guy.
Yeah, I like that Drew Brees, not comparison, but style of quarterback. And I think
Yeah.
he kind of fits that mold.
Yeah.
Moving
Good
on to
athlete. Good arm. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Yeah. Good athlete, good arm, decent mobility, but kind of has that good bridge between what we're looking for, like a multi, like a run first quarterback and a guy that can sit in that pocket. Sorry. Go ahead and move on. I just love Jake Haener.
it's all good. So moving on to our top 5. So this is where we start to see the Let's Talk Seahawks real top 10 come to look. So the top 5, actually for both of us, is Anthony Richardson. Now this might ruffle a few feathers, but he
Not if they're
is
outside Florida. It's not
definitely,
going to.
and honestly, the only reason he's 5 on my list is because if we didn't talk about Anthony Richardson, then we would hear about it from all of our fans. So, so Anthony Richardson is 5th on my list. I see him as a boomer bust guy, right? He's a sophomore. He's young. He doesn't have a lot of experience. He's somebody who is taking advantage of the fact that he has a high profile right now because last year's quarterback class was such garbage, for lack of a better word.
Garbage. It was meh. It was a meh class. I don't want to say garbage. It was a meh class.
So everybody was looking at quarterbacks this year. And so he came out because he had a high profile. For me, he has RG3 athleticism. This guy is elite of elite when it comes to athleticism. And he's huge. He's a big guy and he's fast and he's strong and he can jump high and far and run fast. But let me tell you, RG3 was the rookie of the year when he was in the NFL. He had one knee injury late that season, and he was never the same quarterback because he relied a lot on that athleticism. Now, he stuck around the league for a little while. He showed that he could be a quarterback, but he wasn't ever the same after that injury. So my caution with Anthony Richardson is, are you drafting an athlete? Or are you drafting a quarterback? Now, quarterback, he has a huge arm. He has a Jamarcus Russell kind of arm, right? Jamarcus Russell wowed all the scouts at his pro day from getting onto his knees on the field and throwing the ball 60 yards. And then he was out of the league in 3 years, arguably as the biggest bust in NFL history. Because a strong arm doesn't make a quarterback. Just like being able to run fast and jump high and jump far doesn't make a quarterback. Anthony Richardson is a first-round athlete. He's a 3rd or 4th round quarterback. So what are you drafting?
I don't even know if I'd go that far with him. Look, the only, again, just like you, the reason Anthony Richardson is in my top 5 is because he's going to go top 5 in this draft more than likely. And it's all about upside with him. You draft Anthony Richardson for what he could be. That's it.
Yeah. You draft Anthony Richardson so your replacement as GM and coach can use him 3 years later.
Well, I think there's a chance that somebody's going to draft. I think there is a chance, a solid chance that Anthony Richardson, and this is a little weird, and you're probably going to bash me for this. I think there's a chance that he goes number 1 overall to the Carolina Panthers. And
I'll say 100%.
And the reason is because of that upside. This guy could, again, the ceiling for Anthony Richardson is the highest it's probably ever been for a quarterback. We're talking beyond Cam Newton, beyond Jamarcus Russell. This guy's size, strength, athleticism combo is ridiculous. This guy would be a number 1 draft pick if he went out for the NBA right now. Like, that's the kind of athlete that he is. He would be a 1st round pick in the NBA draft. And I think that's, honestly, if he just declared right now, they'd probably still do it. He's that kind of an athlete. But there are just the reason we can't put him any higher than 5, or the reason I couldn't put him any higher than 5, is because of the number of questions we have about this guy. We've only seen him for 1 year as a starter. This is his first year as a starter. And yes, he has some wow plays, but he also has some what the hell were you thinking plays. His decision-making, his ability to play the quarterback position is the biggest question. I have no doubt that he could have a long career in the NFL, but I think that there's a chance that what we're looking at with him is Terrell Pryor 2.0. And I love Terrell Pryor coming out. He had a couple of great games playing as a rookie for the Las Vegas Raiders, or at the time was the Oakland Raiders. He is that kind of an athlete. He can wow you with his ability to move. He could run away from every defender on the field. He could also launch it from end zone to end zone. But can he become a starting NFL quarterback? That's the big thing here with Anthony Richardson. And I don't know if I see that. No knock on the guy. I've never met him personally. I don't know enough about him, who he is as a person. But just watching him on the field, his floor and ceiling are the highest and lowest in this draft. Period.
Fair. And I don't know the guy. I wish him the best. I want all these guys to succeed on the field. And hey, maybe he will. And then I will come back and I will apologize and I will eat my words because I'm okay admitting when I'm wrong. So let's see what happens. I will have to give him credit. If you look at his stats should be better because he had not a lot of talent around him. And if you look at his accuracy, his receivers had a lot of drop balls. They had a lot of routes that they didn't finish. And so he threw the ball where the guy should have been, and he just broke his route off early. There were a lot of mistakes on that football team. That might be one of the reasons why he came out as a sophomore instead of sticking around. Who knows? But I wish him the best. He's somebody who has a lot of red flags, but hey, he's a boomer bust. I mean, this guy, who knows, could be a Hall of Famer, or he could be out of the league or in a different position in 3 years.
Yeah, I mean, those are his upside. This guy's, I know you hate NFL comparisons, but I think his floor is clearly Jamarcus Russell, and that he's an insane athlete that has all the tools to be a star in this league. And I think his ceiling, we're looking at Cam Newton's prime, which I don't know if you guys remember, he was an NFL MVP that took his team to the Super Bowl. So that's a pretty decent prime to be in.
Yeah, I loved watching Cam Newton in his prime. I just wish he wouldn't have had some of the games he had against the Seahawks. All right. So going to our number 4 prospects. And once again, we did not set this up, but Adam and I did pick the same number 4 prospect, and that's Will Levis out of Kentucky. What do you see in Will Levis?
I mean, I think you see everything that you want to see. This is a guy that, similar to Anthony Richardson, if you were just going to build yourself an NFL quarterback from scratch, you would build Will Levis. I mean, he's got the frame to withstand pressure. He has the fearlessness to stand in the pocket. That I will say one thing about that. I think Will Levis is the most fearless quarterback in this draft. If you go back and watch his games, this man is not afraid to take a hit, and he is not afraid to dole out punishment. If he can get a hit on a defender, he'll do it, and he'll lay them out because he's that big of it. He's that big and strong of an athlete. Again, I mean, he's got the arm, he's got the mobility, he's got everything you could look for in an NFL quarterback prospect. The biggest thing with him, I think, is consistency. And now again, you can go back and talk about the difference in scheme. He had a different coach, different offensive coordinator, different O-line, different skill position players in his second year at Kentucky, and that's where a lot of guys I think are kind of trying not to knock him down and say, hey, he didn't have the same support system, and that's why he had a slightly worse year. But I think if you go back and do a deeper dive, as I think you and I both did, into his game tape, it's not just about the talent around him. I think I think this is a guy who probably was a little high on his own supply, and maybe that's a weird thing to say on this podcast. But this is a guy who I think believed so much in what he was able to do his first year as a starter in Kentucky that he thought he could do no wrong. And so his decision making as a quarterback, and this had nothing to do with the talent around him, his decision making took a huge knock that second year. You watch the throws he made, his ability to look off defenders. He just thought, hey, I can fit this ball into any window I want. And that's where you see the mistakes with him. I think he's a little bit too confident, and overconfidence can work for some guys. Some guys it does. I mean, look, Kirk Cousins. I think I'll say that this guy I think has that kind of a ceiling where or not ceiling. This is a guy who could be that confident, could go in and start as the backup and just overtake the starter because of how dynamic he can be on the field and the type of confidence he'll display in the locker room. This is a guy who can win people over, but he could also make the team look pretty bad.
I'll be honest. The reason that Will Levis is 4 for me, and not 5 or not on my list is that he had a really good 2021 in a pro style offense. He's dealt with changing coordinators. He's dealt with changing coaches. He's dealt with personnel dropping off talent level around him. And he's persevered through it. And so that is a positive on his scouting report for me. Things I don't like. I don't like his footwork. He has this little hitch that he does, which is going to slow you down a little bit, and you can't afford to lose 0.2 of a second off of your drop back in the NFL. When he throws to his left, he doesn't flip his hips and open up his shoulders in order to get a good throwing motion to the left side of the field. He throws across his body, which you're not supposed to do. And he thinks because he has this strong arm and this quick flick of the wrist that he can do that. And maybe he can. But that motion itself is going to add at least 2 interceptions to his yearly totals. Now, if you can live with that, great. But for me, I don't want to give you the ball when I'm supposed to have it. That's just me.
Yeah, this is look. We don't often see this in the NFL anymore. I think kind of because of coaching and whatnot. But there's a history of rookies coming in and starting and like look at Peyton Manning and I'm not. This is not a comparison. They are not the same player in any way, shape, or form. These guys are night and day. But I think that if Will Levis comes in, if he's the week 1 starter for you on an NFL team, he's going to have some amazing highlight plays for you. He is going to lead the league in turnovers.
Oh, easy.
That's all I got to say. He will lead the league in turnovers if he started week 1 for any NFL team.
And if you can deal with that, if you know that, okay, we're going to have this season, but the growth is going to be exponential, then you let him get that experience. You take another high pick next year, and then you build around that quarterback. So if he's your guy for that reason, great. Go take him. Go build around him. Once again, like I said, I wish all these guys luck. He has a great arm. He's mobile, right? He has prototypical size. This is a guy who just screams NFL quarterback. He also has the arrogance that comes with an NFL quarterback. He has the overconfidence. And that's okay if that's how you want that guy to fit in your locker room. I don't know. He's not somebody I'm really high on. I can see the talent, though, and that's why he's on this list.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's why he's where he's at for me, too.
All right. So looking at number 3, you may guess who this is, but this is kind of a shock to some of the other top 10 lists that are out there. And both of us ended up ranking this same player at our number 3. And that is Hendon Hooker out of Tennessee. Adam, I know you've been really high on Hendon Hooker pretty much all season and through this draft process. So why did you have Hendon Hooker ranked 3rd, and why are you so high on him?
So look, there's in an alternate reality where Hendon Hooker doesn't get hurt, tear his ACL this year, and have to have that recovery and be going into this draft with questions about his health. He might have, he could have been my number 1 or number 2 quarterback easily. And I think that's saying something because the guys that we both have in the top 2, these guys are, I think, can't miss talents.
Yeah, they're 1A and 1B.
Oh yeah, no, and that's what I literally have wrote. All things being equal, Hendon Hooker is 1C. I really believe that. I think he's on the level with these guys. The biggest knocks on Hendon Hooker are going to be health. How is he coming? Is he going to be the same guy coming off the knee injury? And age, because he's an older guy. This guy's going to be 25 going to the NFL season. He's going to turn 26 before the end of his first NFL year. And that's you know, again, we can talk about whether or not that's a big deal, but it's a big deal for NFL for his NFL future because this guy's only going to be able to. I mean, there's an NFL window. This guy's window, 3 to 10 or maybe 15 years. But even then, if he plays for 15 years in the NFL, he's going to be one of those older guys coming out. I think he can do it. He has that ability. I mean, again, the only knocks on this guy, you can't read my notes. Sorry about that. I don't know why I showed you that. But the only knocks I can find on this guy are, can he stay healthy? What does he look like coming off this injury and age? And that's it. He's a little bit flat-footed in the pocket. I think we can talk about that. I don't think he's quite a stone the way Will Levis can be back there. But that is one of the things that I think you have to look at. You can see tape, you can watch tape sometimes on this guy where he just stands where he's at in the pocket and doesn't really watch or kind of feel the pressure coming at him. But when he wants to take off, if Hendon Hooker wants to run the ball or he sees an opening, he does not hesitate. He'll run, he'll get those yards. This guy could be one of the best dual threat quarterbacks in the NFL if he's the same guy he was before this injury. He has that ability. He's long. He can move defenders. He can juke guys. There's no knocks on his game. Hendon Hooker, as an athlete, as a player, clearly in the top 3, if not the top 1 or 2 in this draft.
Yeah, I wrote the same thing that basically you said, and that's without the injury, he would definitely be solidified in the top 3 of this NFL class. Before he got injured, he was on the Heisman shortlist. Before he got injured, he was on all of these projections to do well. People were talking about Tennessee being in the college football playoff. I mean, they took out Alabama when both teams were healthy. There are a few things that Hendon Hooker has going against him. He was not in a pro-style offense. So he's going to have to get used to the way they do things in the NFL and more of that pro-style, get ready to what he's going to see. And that's fine. I'm okay with him coming off that injury because what I would do, bring him in, have him go through camp, put him on injured reserve, let him sit the entire year, and next year we can talk about Hendon Hooker pushing to get on the field. I think he's got great progression reading skills. He quickly gets through his progression. He finds the guy he needs to. He's athletic. I'm not as high on his athleticism as you are. Obviously, we don't have testing numbers. He did have a knee injury, so he couldn't go out there and run a 40, do a 3-cone, things like that. I saw that he was athletic, but he didn't rely on it. So you say dual threat. I say athletic quarterback. Meaning he can go out there and get yards when he needs to.
Yeah, he's not a run first guy. But I think you look at, I mean, again, I know we don't, I know you hate this like NFL comparison thing. If we were going to draft a perfect replacement for Geno Smith, like a guy that literally could step in and look like Geno Smith on the field, Hendon Hooker's the guy. They're built similar. I think they have similar playing styles. They're really good at all the things you need to be good at being a quarterback. They don't have the biggest arm. They're not the fastest. They're not the most athletic, but they can do all of those things at maybe not elite, but a very, very good level. He's not one of those guys that's going to look first. He's not Will Levis. He's not Anthony Richardson. He's not going to try and look to run the ball. But if the play breaks down and he needs to, this guy can take it to the house if he has to. He's got that kind of athleticism.
Yeah, to me, his athleticism is late years Russell Wilson. It's let me get to the edge. I'm going to go pick up the first down, go out of bounds, come back, play the next play. It's not, I'm going to boot out. Oh, nobody's open. Okay, I'm going to try to get a 60-yard touchdown. That's not what he's looking to do when he runs. And that's great. I like what I see out of Hendon Hooker. And yeah, I'm right there with you. I think Geno Smith's a good comp. But yeah, I would love to see him in an opportunity to succeed in the NFL.
Yeah, I'm hoping. This is one of the, and I know we're not really talking draft record. We're just talking positions here. But this is a guy I don't think he's going to go in the top 3. It would be a shock if this guy got drafted early in the first round. It would be a shock if he got drafted late in the first round. But if the Seahawks are looking at if the idea is, hey, we want to get our quarterback of the future and sit him behind Geno for the next couple of years, I don't think there's a person that they could. I don't think there's a better fit than Hendon Hooker. And they may have to give up. They may have to do some position manipulation on the draft board. They may have to trade back up in the first round if they don't want to take him at 5 or 20. But I don't think if we did trade back into the first round and select him at the end of the first round, having a 5th-year option on Hendon Hooker, that's not a bad scenario for me.
No, not at all. So our number 2 quarterback for both of us on this list is Bryce Young out of Alabama. So I've got a few things to say here about Bryce Young. First of all, I don't care what he weighed in at the combine. He's not 204 pounds.
Yeah.
And you know he's not 204 pounds because he didn't work out. Listen, when you've taken a bunch of Pepto to, keep things all stopped up, and you drank 2-3 gallons of water before that day of weigh-ins, they did what they did to try to get weight on him. But go look at Russell Wilson's combine picture. Go look at Bryce Young's combine picture. They weighed in at the same weight and they're about the same size. So you can tell one of these guys is a legit 205 and one of these guys is a water inflated 205. So for me, I do have those concerns for size, not as much height. Listen, Bryce Young is probably the smartest quarterback in this class. And I'd say the smartest quarterback the last couple of years to come out. This guy knows exactly where everybody's supposed to be. He reads a defense. He knows because that defense is giving this look, that means I need to adjust where I think this other guy is going to be, because he's not tall enough to see over his offensive lineman. So he knows I need to adjust this guy's position on the field by X amount, and he throws with anticipation because he knows that's where these guys are going to be. His success comes from preparation. It comes from intelligence. It comes from knowing his offense inside and out. He is intelligent, smart. I don't care what you say. Bryce Young is probably the best mind of any quarterback in this class.
Yeah, go back and watch game tape. Watch any game that Alabama played with him starting, and he will be the guy that you look at because he's a conductor. I don't know if anybody's into classical music or ever been to a concert like that, but you watch the way it got. He knows what everyone's part is, when they're supposed to be, where they're supposed to be, when they're coming in. He's that kind of a director. This guy can orchestrate the offense like nobody. The only reason that Bryce Young is not my number one quarterback, the only reason is because of the concerns about his size. We'd never seen a guy come into the NFL at his size, play the quarterback position, and have success. Look, Alabama's Alabama. Everyone talks about it being, the NFL light, and I think there was jokes a few years ago when Alabama was winning back to back NFL championships. Is like, could they come in and compete with the Browns? And I'm sorry for Browns fans, but that's just the way it is. Could they compete with those bottom tier NFL teams? And that there was a legit conversation. I think the answer is absolutely not. They would get blown out 70-0 if they played an NFL team, even if it was the 1999 Browns. But Alabama's Alabama for a reason. Alabama's pushed out quarterbacks over the last several seasons. I mean, they used to have Tua Tagovailoa, Jalen Hurts, and Bryce Young all in their QB room, and Mac Jones. These are Mac Jones. Don't ask me how Mac Jones beat Bryce Young out for the starting position, because if you go back and watch tape, I couldn't tell you the answer. I have no idea. It's clear that Bryce Young's the better quarterback between the two. Nothing against Mac Jones, but Doughboy got drafted for no reason. Sorry, Mac. But yeah, the only reason he's not the number one guy on my list, the only reason is because I have concerns about can he stand up to NFL pressure. And the biggest look, if he was going to a team that had a solid offense, if he was going to the Eagles or the 49ers or some team that had this, ridiculous offensive line that could make sure that he wasn't going to get touched, this guy he could lead that team to the NFL. But there's a reason why he's going to go to one of these teams that's picking in the top of the draft. It's because they're not great teams. And whether it's Carolina or Houston or I don't know who's well, maybe not Indianapolis, because they've actually got a pretty decent O-line. But there's a reason why you're scared for him, because if he goes to a team that doesn't have a solid O-line and can't keep him clean, he's going to have 250, 300-pound guys hitting him, and that's going to hurt a guy at his size. And that's it. That's the only reason he's not number one.
Yeah, and you got to think it's a good time for him to be coming into the NFL, because the NFL is over protecting quarterbacks. I am all for safety, but I think the NFL has taken it to kind of a non-competitive level. Tom Brady should have never played his last 5 years in the NFL. The only reason he did is because it was illegal to touch Tom Brady on a football field. And that's basically where the NFL is going. Listen, there's one thing. The reason I put Bryce Young at 2 instead of 1, I love all this stuff about him. I love the anticipation, his quick release, the way he reads a defense and makes adjustments in the offense. They're all amazing. I absolutely love it. The reason he's number 2 is because you can't trust Alabama quarterbacks. There has, outside of Mac Jones, who the Patriots are looking to trade in his second year after he got beat out by a late round pick in his second year. Outside of Mac Jones, Alabama quarterbacks do not impact their teams in their first couple years. You got to think Jalen Hurts left Alabama, went to Oklahoma. From his Oklahoma tape is why he was drafted where he was drafted. And then he was really effective in his second year in the league. Tua was effective his third or fourth year in the league. These guys need time to get out of the Alabama mindset, get in an NFL classroom, have the quarterbacks coach get these guys up to speed. I don't know what's going on in Alabama. It might be the fact that the quarterbacks are talented, but they're surrounded by number 1 position recruits all around them. So they never have to play to the competition of their competition. They're always the most talented team on the field. So you don't have to work as hard. If I have top 5 recruits across my offensive line, do I really need to work as hard as that guy who's dealing with a 2-star right guard and a 3-star left tackle and 2 guys who weren't even brought in and they had to walk on the line? No. And I'm throwing to the number 1 receiver. I mean, look at the guys that he had on his team that he was throwing to or running the ball or he had blocking for him. The level of the guys that surround you can sometimes stunt your growth. And I think that's what happens with Alabama quarterbacks.
I think that you made a lot of great points, and I agree with all of them. I do want to say that the one thing that gives me hope with Bryce Young is you take all that into account. The fact that he's at Alabama, the fact that he's surrounded by all these 5-star number 1, recruits coming to college football, he still stood out on tape. This guy finds a way to shine, and it's because of how well he plays the position. This is a guy that, of all the guys that I think you could have, you could enjoy watching on a field, Bryce Young is just a joy to watch. He's a very fluid athlete. He plays the position the way it's supposed to be played. He's fun to watch, and the fact that he could stand out on tape as the Alabama quarterback, that's why I think he's where he's at in this draft, and with the potential to go number 1 overall. I think if you're a betting guy, and I know you are, if you're gonna bet on who's gonna earn Rookie of the Year, the best odds are for Bryce Young.
Yeah, agreed. So that means our number 1 guy on both of our lists is CJ Stroud out of Ohio State. Adam, why do you have CJ Stroud number 1?
I think it's kind of funny because we talk about Alabama quarterbacks. Ohio State has the same kind of knock on them for being just dominant in the area that they're in college football. They always get some of the best recruits, being that in that kind of Dust Bowl area. The reason that CJ Stroud is my number 1 guy, because of all these guys that I think can come in and step in day 1 and be the starting quarterback and be a star on the field. He's the guy. CJ Stroud, I think there are a few guys I think you can watch college football tape on and go, wow, that was perfect. What he did there was perfect in that play. And CJ Stroud's one of those guys. And I think the only knock I really have on him is he a system QB? Because Ohio State has its system. There's a reason why they're always in that conversation for the college playoffs. I want to see how he is outside the system. But this is a guy who I think his freshman year he had a over 70% completion percentage. This guy doesn't miss. He doesn't miss. This guy will throw the ball exactly where it needs to be every single time. Now, whether or not the player catches it or the defensive guy makes a good play of the ball, that's debatable. But if you were just going to say close your eyes and you've got to hit this spot, CJ Stroud will hit that spot every single time. He's that good of a passer. And this may be the only guy that if the Seahawks are going to draft the guy at number 5, And I don't think they're going to draft a quarterback. But if the Seahawks are going to take a quarterback at number 5, the only guy that I will have zero worries about is CJ Stroud. If he's there at number 5, take him. Period. Take him. That's it. I'm okay with the Seahawks drafting a quarterback at number 5 if his name's CJ Stroud, and that's why he's number 1 on my list, because he's the only guy I have zero questions about if the Seahawks take him. I know why they did it. I think he's perfect in the system because I think he can play in any system. Although, again, you want to see what he looks like outside of Ohio State. But yeah, the reason he's number 1 is because I don't think there's a better guy that is going to come out of this draft and be able to start day 1 and look like he belongs in the NFL.
Yeah, I love it. Listen, CJ Stroud is another one of those guys that I say is a gamer. And that's a tag that I attach to him. Everybody knew he was 1A or 1B in this class. He did not have to throw at the combine. He could have sat and waited for his pro day where he had everything scripted, nice and pretty to make him look good, throwing to guys he was used to. But no, he came out. He said, listen, I don't care who's catching passes. Is it that guy from that school? I don't care. Run the route. He was out there to show everybody that he was the best. He stepped on that field to say, look at me, now try to beat me. And nobody did. He was the best looking quarterback at the combine. Period. The ball jumped off his arm. His placement was fantastic. And when we got to that deep ball part that everybody loves, that's not really, what you see in the NFL, but everybody loves to watch these guys throw it 60 yards. He threw the ball farther than anybody else. Even these guys who had the touted strong arm, cannon, bazooka on top of their shoulder. No, CJ Stroud was the one who was putting it 62, 65 yards down the field and dropping it in the bucket. Receivers weren't having to slow down. They didn't have to extend or push at the last minute. Just ball right where it needed to be. And that's what you get from CJ Stroud.
He has elite ball placement. This guy, he is the best thrower of the football. I think I haven't done I don't do this a lot. I'm not a big watch college tape and scout these guys. That's not my thing. That's why we have Robbie on this podcast. But I did it obviously because we're doing this thing. He doesn't miss. The ball is going to go where he wants it to go every single time. And again, it's about whether or not the receiver catches it, but it's going to be where it's supposed to be. Period. If it's a 15-yard dig route, he'll hit it every single time. Deep ball hit's going to be where it's supposed to be every single time. We can talk. I love going back and watching tape of Geno's deep ball, and if you want to go deeper, even Russell Wilson's deep ball, because of how pretty it looks dropping right in the bucket. That's the kind of thrower that CJ Stroud. He's already a professional. He's already a pro at throwing the ball. It's about, can he come in, learn a system, and do it that way. But no, there's no mechanics he has to fix. The one thing, and I'll say this, and this has been the big kind of knock on him, and whether or not he's supposed to go number 1 overall, is he the athlete that teams are looking for? And I think that's a good question. We haven't really seen it, but if you go back, and I think the best game of all college football that I watched this year was the playoff or the bowl game between Ohio State and Georgia. That was a game of those were the 2 best teams in college football.
Yeah.
You can't convince me otherwise. That should have been the national championship. Those were the 2 best teams. And when he had to make plays, he put his team on his back because his defense was not doing him any favors that game. But he showed that if he has to carry a team, he can. He was running for first downs. He was juking defenders. He was creating plays outside the pocket. All the stuff that everyone was like, can he do this at the next level? Go back and watch that game if you have any questions about whether or not CJ Stroud can be that kind of improviser. Watch that game. He answered all of my questions in that game. He was perfect. If the winner of the game was the guy that had the team that had the best player on the field, then they would have beat Georgia that day because CJ Stroud was the best player on the field.
I think that sums it up great. This was the Let's Talk Seahawks podcast. We went through our top 10 quarterbacks, listing our top 5 in order, and then some mid-round and late-round guys that we think you guys need to keep an eye on. Thank you for listening. As always, go Hawks.
Go Hawks.